The order came from the top, echoing through the corridors of power with a sense of finality that left no room for doubt or hesitation. It was the will of the Central Military Commission, the highest authority in China's armed forces, whose decisions shaped the fate of nations. The USS John Paul Jones, a symbol of American naval might, was entering waters China claimed as its own, territory Beijing considered non-negotiable, a red line that had been crossed too many times before. For years, the People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLN, had only shadowed and protested these so-called freedom of navigation patrols, issuing warnings but never escalating beyond close observation. But today, August 2nd, 2025, would be different. A day destined to be remembered, when routine was replaced by resolve. The directive was clear and uncompromising. Intercept and challenge the American warship, force it to alter course, to acknowledge China's growing power and determination. In a fortified command bunker deep beneath Beijing, admirals and party officials watched events unfold in real time, their faces tense and determined, aware that history was being written in those very moments. This confrontation was about more than a single ship or a disputed patch of sea. It was about rewriting the rules of naval power, about testing the resolve of rivals and the limits of international order. The planned destroyer Lanzhou, a modern warship bristling with advanced weaponry, would lead the interception, backed by a web of support vessels, aircraft, and surveillance assets all moving in concert. China's leaders believed their modernized navy, equipped with cutting-edge technology and operating close to home, gave them the edge in any confrontation near their shores. In Beijing, officials watched video feeds and intelligence reports, convinced that the US was a declining power, stretched thin, and unwilling to risk open conflict so far from home. They bet that America would ultimately back down. The operation was a calculated gamble, meticulously planned to send a message not just to Washington, but to every nation in the region. China was ready to defend its interests, no matter the cost. But every gamble has a countermove, and every strategy invites a response. The stakes were higher than ever. The men who gave the order had war-gamed countless scenarios, but reality is never predictable. The fog of war, the unpredictability of human decision, and the risk of miscalculation loomed large. The fate of sailors, the stability of the region, and perhaps the peace of the world now hung on split-second decisions made in the heat of the moment. The order was transmitted, and there was no turning back. The pieces were in motion, each ship and aircraft a part of a larger, unfolding drama that would shape the future. The Dragon was ready to challenge the Eagle, its resolve steeled by years of preparation and a newfound sense of destiny. In Beijing, a new day was dawning, and its leaders believed their time had finally come. To assert their vision, to claim their place on the world stage. The world watched, holding its breath, as news of the standoff flashed across screens from Washington to Tokyo, from London to Sydney. The South China Sea was about to become the stage for a new kind of confrontation, one that would test not just ships and sailors, but the balance of power in the 21st century. Far from Beijing, the USS John Paul Jones cut through the South China Sea. Its mission, a freedom of navigation operation, asserting international rights. The ship's presence reassured allies and signaled America's commitment to the region. On the bridge, Commander Evans and his crew were calm, professional, and ready. They'd drilled for the scenario countless times. Their job, be firm, not provocative, assert their right without escalating. The destroyer was part of a larger carrier strike group, with the USS Ronald Reagan's influence looming. The patrol protected vital sea lanes and projected American power. The crew knew they were being watched by satellites, fishing vessels, and rival ships. But for them, it was another day at the office. They checked systems, stood watch, and maintained readiness. Confident in their training and mission, they prepared for whatever came next. A test was coming. Trouble appeared as a fast-moving contact, slicing across the radar screen with alarming speed. On the John Paul Jones radar, the blip grew larger, its trajectory unmistakable. A vessel was closing in, fast. The planned destroyer Lanzhou was on a direct intercept course, its approach unusually aggressive, signaling clear intent. Commander Evans was alerted. The mood on the bridge shifted instantly from routine to razor-sharp focus. On the Lanzhou, Captain Wei prepared to challenge the Americans, his crew bracing for a tense encounter. Over the radio, a stern warning crackled through. "American warship, you are in Chinese waters. Alter course immediately." The reply was calm, but firm. "Chinese warship, we are in international waters. We will maintain course." Neither side was willing to yield. The Lanzhou closed in, refusing to back down, its hull slicing through the waves with purpose. On radar, the two ships drew dangerously close, a high-stakes game of chicken playing out in real time, every second raising the stakes. Commander Evans ordered general quarters. Alarms blared as the crew rushed to battle stations, adrenaline surging. The Lanzhou maneuvered aggressively, cutting across the American bow, a clear act of intimidation, daring the Americans to react. The intention was obvious: force a confrontation, test the resolve of the US Navy in front of the world. In Beijing, military officials watched the standoff unfold in real time, eager to see if the Americans would blink first. On the John Paul Jones, every eye was on the Chinese ship. Nerves stretched taut, breaths held as the distance shrank. A collision, a miscalculation. Any mistake could spark disaster, turning a standoff into an international crisis in seconds. The world watched as the standoff escalated, news outlets flashing urgent updates, analysts speculating on the next move. The American crew held their ground, refusing to be bullied, their discipline and training put to the ultimate test. The Chinese ship pressed even closer, testing the limits of international protocol. The tension was electric, every second stretching longer. One wrong move could change everything. Lives, careers, and the fragile peace between two great powers. The standoff had reached its breaking point. The world held its breath, waiting to see who would make the next move. The confrontation wasn't just physical, it was electronic. The John Paul Jones's Aegis system tracked the Lanzhou with precision. The Chinese ship's Dragon Eye radar was capable, but not a match for Aegis. The Americans had superior situational awareness, linked to a vast military network. Commander Evans saw the whole battlefield, ships, aircraft, and threats. The Chinese tried to jam the American radar, but Aegis filtered out the interference. Electronic warfare officers calmly analyzed the jamming, learning from it. The duel was one-sided. The Americans saw everything. The Chinese fought in the dark. The US advantage was clear, information dominance. The John Paul Jones remained unshaken. The Chinese efforts only revealed their own limitations. The invisible war was as decisive as the visible one. The Americans held the upper hand. Tension soared as Chinese J-11B fighters roared in from Hainan, their mission intimidate the American destroyer. But the USS Ronald Reagan launched Super Hornets and a Growler in response. The Growler jammed Chinese communications and radar, blinding the pilots. The American fighters established a combat air patrol, blocking the Chinese approach. The Chinese pilots, disoriented and outmatched, broke off and returned to base. No shots were fired. Air superiority was established through technology and tactics. The Americans controlled the skies. The first aerial challenge ended without a missile launched. The message was clear: the US owned the air. Beneath the waves, a Chinese Song-class submarine stalked the John Paul Jones. The US destroyer's sonar and a Seahawk helicopter hunted for threats. Expert sonar operators detected the faint signature of the Chinese sub. The helicopter flew over, pinging the sub with active sonar, a clear warning. Inside the Chinese sub, the crew heard the unmistakable ping. "We see you." Their stealth was gone. They were exposed and vulnerable. The American response was measured. No torpedoes, just a message. The Chinese submarine was neutralized without a shot. The underwater threat was eliminated. The Americans had total domain awareness. The crisis had reached its most dangerous point. Tension in the command centers was palpable, every officer aware that a single misstep could ignite a global conflict. On board the Chinese destroyer Lanzhou, Captain Wei, feeling the weight of the moment, made a fateful decision. He ordered his crew to lock the fire control radar onto the USS John Paul Jones, a move that signaled the highest level of threat short of actual combat. This was the final step before launching weapons, a red line in naval confrontations that, once crossed, is rarely taken back. The air was thick with anticipation, every crew member bracing for what might come next. Instantly, alarms blared throughout the American ship. The threat was unmistakable, and the crew snapped into action, trained for moments just like this. Commander Evans, the captain of the John Paul Jones, had only seconds to decide. Should he respond with force, risking all-out war, or show restraint and hope for de-escalation? The Aegis missile system was primed and ready. One press of a button could unleash a barrage of missiles, changing the course of history in an instant. But Evans paused. He chose restraint, fully aware that firing first would make the United States the aggressor in the eyes of the world. His decision was a gamble, but one rooted in experience and a desire to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. He opened a secure channel, his voice steady but urgent. "Chinese warship, you have locked fire control radar on a US Navy vessel. This is a dangerous escalation. Cease immediately. We are not your enemy today." The message was clear, direct, and left no room for misunderstanding. The Americans wanted the Chinese to know. They were seen, their actions understood, and their intentions not taken lightly. The crew stood ready at their stations, disciplined and alert, prepared to defend their ship if necessary, but hoping it wouldn't come to that. Around the globe, governments and citizens alike watched the unfolding crisis. Newsrooms buzzed with updates, and world leaders monitored the situation, knowing that the next few minutes could change everything. The standoff teetered on the edge of disaster. Every second felt like an eternity as both sides waited for the other to make a move. The American crew waited, tense but unwavering, their training and discipline holding them steady in the face of danger. On the Lanzhou, the Chinese officers exchanged urgent glances. Captain Wei weighed his options. Should he escalate further or step back from the brink? The next move would decide not just the fate of two ships, but the peace of an entire region. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a sign. The Americans stood firm, their resolve clear. They were prepared for any outcome, but determined not to be the ones to start a war. Their message was unmistakable. We are ready, we are resolute, and we will not be intimidated. Across the world, leaders and citizens alike watched, anxious for the Chinese response, knowing that history was being written in real time. The fate of the confrontation hung in the balance, every moment charged with the possibility of peace or catastrophe. One decision, one word, one action would shape the future for generations to come. The razor's edge of history was here, and the world could only wait to see which way it would tip. As the standoff peaked, the final move came from below. Near the Chinese carrier Shandong, the USS North Dakota, a Virginia-class submarine, surfaced less than a mile away. Its appearance shocked the Chinese command. Their flagship was utterly vulnerable. The sub surfaced for 60 seconds, then vanished beneath the waves. The message: we can reach you anywhere, anytime. The Chinese gamble had failed. Surface ships outmaneuvered, aircraft outmatched, submarine exposed, carrier threatened. On the Lanzhou, orders changed: de-escalate immediately. The fire control radar was switched off. The destroyer turned away. The Chinese force withdrew. The USS John Paul Jones continued its patrol, unshaken. The US Navy had fired no shots, but demonstrated overwhelming dominance. The South China Sea remained open. The world had witnessed the quiet, unshakable resolve of the United States Navy.